I'm going to give you an exam today. Your real final exam is going to come right now, but I would like you to be exempt. And if you're exempt, you can just walk out the door now, get a cookie on your way out. So let's see who's going to be exempt first. So I have great faith in you. I'm an optimistic person, so I think everybody's going to get up and walk out as soon as I make you exempt. So everybody stand up and get ready to walk out, right? All seniors stand up. All right, so I'm just assuming you're all going to be exempt, but the exemption policy for you guys is twofold, right? You have to have an A or a B, right? And then you have to have the attendance component, right? All right, so let's go for the A or the B. Let's evaluate, and it's self-evaluation, right? Let's evaluate your church involvement during your high school career, right? So 4 years, and we'll even allow for this, for it to ascend to A or B, or if you racked up a lot of points early, you can kind of slide off at the end. How many of you say, oh my goodness, church involvement, high school, I get an A or a B, right? Okay, anybody that doesn't get an A or, whoa, that was only one of you going like that, all right? We grade on a curve, okay? You need to be a little bit generous to yourself. You really think that you're exempt. If you're not exempt, you know you didn't get an A or a B in church involvement. You better go ahead and take a seat for your exam. Jesse's the first one down. Wait a minute, most of the kids from our church. Okay, now let's try the... that's not in the script, but that's okay. That's all right, we'll go with it. Let's see if the attendance part. So how many days are you allowed to miss at Covington High? And 3. Okay, so in your senior year, have you missed more than 3 Sundays in church your senior year? Well, if you don't know, then you better sit down for this exam. You got to take this exam. Go ahead and sit down. You missed. All right, so I have my final exam for you. Please take a card and get ready with a pen or a pencil. I have, I think, a fairly easy exam. You didn't bring a pen or a pencil to your final exam? Good thing I'm prepared for you. Okay, here you go. Take a pen or a pencil. I think they're all pencils. It's a really easy final exam, I think, but doesn't the teacher always say it's an easy exam? I wrote the final exam right. It's a 2-question final exam. It's multiple choice. That makes it easy, but it's a little bit of a tough multiple choice because none of the above, well, I'll explain that. 2 easy questions. We'll start easy and warm you up. Don't cheat. You know how. That troubles me. Who is, no table talk, who is the number 1 failure in the New Testament? Oh, it's multiple choice. I get to give choices, right? I put the choices in alphabetical order so you don't know if there's a pattern to my questioning. Choice number 1, Judas. He betrayed Jesus, and 24 hours later, Jesus died on a cross. Peter, who 24 hours before Jesus is on the cross, Peter attested to his loyalty to Jesus. And Jesus says, really? Really? You think you're going to stick around and be loyal? You're going to betray, or you're going to deny me 3 times before tomorrow morning. And he did. So Peter kind of struggles. A woman at the well, you remember her story, woman at the well? Jesus had a conversation with her and called her out on the fact that she had been married 5 times, and the guy she was sleeping with, number 6, was not her husband. Kind of a big failure. Woman caught in adultery. I mean, you know what adultery is. She was caught in the act, dragged naked and thrown at the feet of Jesus. So those pretty big 4 failures. You decide, or none of the above. If you think none of the above, that I didn't give you the right choice of the biggest failure of the New Testament, then all you have to do is put none of the above. That would be E. But then you need to supply an answer for who it obviously is, since I didn't give you that choice. Boy, that's a hard multiple choice question. A, B, C, D. Is it Judas? Is it Peter? Is it the woman at the well? Is it the woman caught in it? What are you looking at? You look at your paper, young lady. Thinking. Yeah, I always think like this too. Just teasing you. All right, A, B, C, and D or E, none of the above. You fill in a name. Right for question number 2. You know you're going to get it wrong if you don't put an answer down, so put an answer down. A little advice to you. Question number 2. Again, multiple choice. Carly, don't look over there. She doesn't know the answer anyway. Man. Who's the second biggest failure in the New Testament? I'm going to change my list a little bit, all right? Again, alphabetically. Second biggest failure, Peter. We already talked about him. He denies Jesus 3 times. Rich young ruler who goes and has a little conversation with Jesus and says, what do I have to do to get into heaven? Jesus gives him a whole list. Then the guy says, I've done all those. And then Jesus says one more thing, and the guy turns and walks away, says, can't do that. Number 3, woman of the well, we already talked about her. That'd be C. D would be the woman caught in adultery. Or E, none of the above. My favorite tricky answer. You fill in the name, we'll see if you're right. Now make sure you've put your name first and last at the top of your test, and please turn those cards in. And I want my pencils back too, all right? Yeah, I want my pencils back. Some of them you're not done? It's multiple choice. What time's your party? People are going to be late. This time it won't be my fault. Okay, come on, pass them to the end. Pencils too. Let's go. Come on, I have to grade these things. The joy of being the teacher is you don't have to take the final exam. The joy of being the student is the teacher has to grade them all. You trying to steal all my pencils? What's up with that?
Somebody would know.
Yeah, well, I would. I did. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I got a lot of... Okay, good, thanks. Thank you. Hey, on behalf of the Covington community, allow me to congratulate you guys on your almost high school graduation. I really mean that. What you have accomplished by graduating from high school in a few days is so much bigger than just getting the right number of credits in the right number of academic disciplines. Is a whole lot bigger than that. Your accomplishments that will culminate in your commencement, they really mean this. It's time to commence to the next level. In just a handful of days, you'll no longer be the senior class of Covington High School 2016. You'll be the graduated class of Covington High School 2016. You'll no longer be students at Covington High School. You'll be the alumni of Covington High School. Covington High School will no longer be your high school, it will be your alma mater. And with all of that, by graduating from high school, you really place yourself in this unique position where you can now deepen your impact on the town of Covington and the state of Ohio and this great nation of ours, and frankly, even on the world stage. That's how big graduating from high school is. And let me just be real direct with you guys today. Frankly, our community, our state, our nation, and our world, we need you. We need you in a huge way. We need you to continue your education. And what form that continuance takes place doesn't really matter, whether it's on the job training, whether it's in the military, whether it's at a trade school or a community college or a four-year institution. It doesn't matter. We need you to continue your education. And once you've done that, we then need you to invest that education and combine with that education your creativity, your out-of-the-box thinking, your little millennial generation way of doing things that are altruistic. We need you to make an impact on our world. And as much as we need you, and as much as today is the beginning of the celebration season with baccalaureate, and then we head into the open houses, and then we do the commencement thing, and we will cheer for you guys. As much as that is true, I've got to tell you the truth about our culture. Our culture has put an expectation of failure on top of you. What? No, really. Because what we do is we assign our statistical analysis of the past, and we just assume you will fall to the level of our expectation. Here's what I mean. 30% of you, if you go on to college, will drop out before the first year is complete. 30% of you. Another 40% of the total will join those dropouts in years 2 and 3 of college. That means only 30% of you will complete the goal of the next stage of your life, the goal that you've set for yourself. That's 70% failure rate. That's what we expect, because that's what the last year did, and the year before, and the last decades before. 70%. 50% of you are going to find the love of your life in the next 4 years and marry that person and then divorce that person later. 50% failure rate. We assume it's true of you guys. It's been true of every generation before you. Let's talk about the elephant in the room when you get to college. College is a partying environment, and American culture puts up with it. Listen to these statistics. 80% of you will drink alcohol before you leave college. You say, big deal, I turned 21. Yeah, okay, if we were only talking about legal drinking. But never mind, that's none of my business, but this is my business. 50% of college students will participate regularly in binge drinking. Binge drinking, by definition, is consuming so much alcohol in 2 hours that you are beyond the ability to control your actions. 50% will participate in that, and our culture says that's okay. I'm not okay with that, and I'll tell you why. Because of what happens when that kind of drinking happens. Statistically, 690,000 students were assaulted last year by people who were under the influence of alcohol, kids that were 18 to 22 years old. 100,000 reports of date rape under the influence of alcohol last year. Academic, 25% of people were flunking out, and they traced it back to their love for alcohol more than their love for going to the library. Those statistics are scary. America expects you to drink. We expect you to smoke weed. We expect you to do hard drugs. We expect that. And we say that's okay. And I'm sorry. It's not just everybody else that says you're going to fail. We in the church agree with the statistic that 75% of you will abandon any Christian faith that you have by the time you're 22, and you'll never come back. Our culture has a real pessimistic view for you guys. We just expect you to fall to our level of expectations. Well, I got news for you. I can't speak for anybody else in this building. I can't speak for the community, the state, the nation, the world. I can only speak for me. Failure is not one of your choices. Take it off the table. Failure is not one of your choices. Well, my opinion of you is not just my opinion of you. It's actually kind of how God views you. I'm informed by God's opinion of you. Here's what I'd like to do this morning. Here's what I'd like to attempt to do this morning. I want to see if I can convince you in about 13 minutes that God really believes in you. That God is not sitting up in the Oval Office of heaven with his finger twitching on the I am so ticked at you, I'm going to zap you with lightning or hit you with failure. No, God is passionate about you. Let me just make an attempt to convince you of that. In the end zone of football games, on the front row, think about when you're watching Ohio State, right? The end zone, we get a lot of camera views of the end zone when it's Ohio State, right? Because they score a lot of touchdowns. There is a guy sitting in the front row, and he has a big sign, and it says John 3:16. Now, I don't know if that's very effective to communicate with people, hey, God really, really loves you, for some guy to be sitting in the best seat in the end zone holding up a sign. In fact, I keep searching the internet for the application for that job. I want somebody else to buy me a ticket to a front row seat in the end zone of an Ohio State football game, just game after game after game. That's great. But if you actually look at John 3:16, it's the most famous book in the New Testament, and it says this: "For God loved the world so much that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in his one and only Son should not perish but have everlasting life." Jesus himself, within 24 hours of when he goes and gives his life in death, in execution-style death, Jesus says this to his group of followers: "Greater love has no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends." Jesus used inverted syntax. You remember studying that in English class, the rhetoric of putting the important thing at the beginning and bookending the thought? Greater love has no man than this. Okay, I'm listening now. That he lays down his life for his friends. And with 24 hours of saying that, Jesus stretched out his hands and he allowed them to crucify him, to execute him in order to pay for the sins of the world. God doesn't want you to be a failure. God values you so much that he sent his Son to die for you. So let me see if I can connect that thought to your college experience, your boot camp experience, your going into the job workforce experience. The next time you're watching a sporting event and you see that guy that got the best seat in the end zone holding that sign, instead of just thinking like me, how do I get that job? Think about this. John 3:16. God is cheering for you, and when he said, how can I prove to them that I really care about them, that I really love them? Greater love has no man than this, that he lays down his life for his friends, and he does. And you need to remember that. When you see it on the placard at the football game, you need to remember that thought, because society has such a low view of you that they just assume you're going to fail. God has such a high view of you that he paid the ultimate price with the life of his son for you. You just remember that when you see that placard, because I got news for you. Molecular biology is going to give you a run for your academic money. Are you the valedictorian? Oh, no. Because that means you're going to take classes like molecular biology, and it will give you a run for your money. Statistics is going to kick your butt. Did I really say that in church? Statistics is going to kick your butt. You're going to give in to peer pressure and go to a party where all hell breaks loose, and you're going to be part of it. And you're going to wake up the next day regretting it, not just for the headache that's raging in your body, but for the guilt that's raging in your soul. The emotional struggle of being away from home is going to bring some of you guys home for Thanksgiving. But you're not coming just for turkey and a feast. You're staying home because you can't take being away anymore. Boot camp is going to push you right up to the edge of what you cannot handle. In other words, if I'm telling you the truth, you are going to stumble and stumble and stumble, but failure is not one of your choices. The question is, what do you do when you fail? Well, you remember that sign in the end zone, John 3:16. God values me so much that he gave his life to redeem me. So even when I stumble, there is forgiveness. And then Jesus spends his entire 3 years on earth of ministry. 30 years we don't know much about, but 3 years. Most of the biblical record about Jesus is year 30 to 33, his ministry years. Time and time again, who does Jesus reach out and handle? Who does he deal with? Who does he spend time with? People that stumble a lot. And the pattern of Jesus is he tends to pick them up, deal with them, talk to them, and then urge them not to stumble again. That's what Jesus does time and time again, because his expectation is failure is not one of your choices. You're going to stumble. But failure is not one of your choices. Mind if I grade your exams? Okay, so question number one was, what was the right answer to question number one? Question number one was, who's the biggest failure? Oh, yeah, that's an easy one, right? That's a really easy one. The right answer is A. There's an A. There's a bunch of blank ones. I hope those are just leftovers, not just people that didn't try. All right, so lots of, yeah, we got A. We got Jude. E. Oh, no. A. You guys are doing good. B. That's wrong. B. That's wrong. None of the above. But you didn't put an answer in. It's automatically wrong. A, good. You guys are doing well on question number one. Yeah, none of the above. Nobody. Ooh, good philosophical answer. I got to talk to you. And E, no, listen. Number one failure in the New Testament. Number one failure is Judas. Judas was part of the inner circle. Judas was there when Jesus washed the disciples' feet. He knew how valued he was, and Judas made this horrible choice. And it's not his horrible choice of betraying Jesus that makes him a failure. It's that he never turns around after failure. Here's an interesting thought. If Judas would have betrayed Jesus all the way to the cross, then Judas would have felt guilty about it and done something like go to Jesus and after resurrection said, Jesus, I sold you out. Jesus would have forgiven him. But Judas didn't do that. He never had his moment of discovery. He felt guilty about it, but he never went to Jesus and dealt with it. So Judas is number one failure. Question number two, though, this is a hard question. Who's the number two biggest failure? I don't think I even need to grade your exam. We don't really have time for that. Teachers do this, you know. We just make up what your grades are sometimes. If you put none of the above, we'll have to deal with that in conversation. Come to my office, we'll have coffee, make a conference. But how about this one? Woman at the well, is she's the second biggest failure in the New Testament? Woman at the well, I mean, she did have 5 husbands and she's sleeping with a guy that's not her husband. That's kind of up there on the list of. No way. No way she's the biggest failure. You know why? Because Jesus identified what she did wrong, and she was brokenhearted about it, and she changed. And she changes in such a radical way. She goes and gets all her friends, and people that don't like her very much, frankly, and she says, you guys got to meet this guy. He told me everything bad I did and told me to stop doing it, and I'm not doing it anymore. She's not a failure at all because she changed. How about this one? Woman caught in adultery, in the very act of adultery. Do you remember the last words Jesus gives to the woman caught in adultery? He says, woman, go and sin no more. And the implication is she didn't sin anymore. She was a changed person, so she's not a failure. How about Peter? Peter, oh my goodness. Peter, who can't keep his mouth shut. Peter, who on the night that Jesus was betrayed, Jesus says, all of you guys are going to abandon me. And Peter goes, not me, Jesus. I'll be here to the end. And Jesus stops his little speech and turns to Peter and says, really, Peter? Let me tell you something, Peter, about you. Everybody else is just going to betray me one time, deny me one time. You're going to do it 3 times in the next 12 hours. And Peter did. So is Peter the number 2 biggest failure in the New Testament? Congregation, what would I have said to that last week? Because I used to say that all the time to you. I'm changing my lecture, okay? No, he's not a failure. He's not a failure at all, because what happens after he denies Jesus 3 times, then Jesus goes to the cross, and Jesus is resurrected, comes back completely alive, and then has breakfast with Peter. And they get together, and they have this little walk and talk, and Jesus asks him 3 times, let's get this right, do you love me or not, yes or no? And Peter 3 times says, yes, I do. I think maybe 3 times to match up with the times that he denied him. And every time Jesus says, look, then feed my sheep, then care for my lambs, and tend to my flock, Jesus projects success into his future. Now watch this, gang. Within 40 days of his biggest stumble, when he denies Jesus 3 times, within 40 days, the fallen, stumbling Peter is restored by Jesus. Then on this date, 2,116 years, or 2,016 years ago, roughly, the day of Pentecost, Peter, the failure, the stumbler, the guy that denies Jesus 3 times, he stands up and he gives a sermon to thousands of people, and he calls them out for what they've done by crucifying Jesus. And Peter finally becomes what Jesus predicted that he would be, and it's a mass success. Now, I got to give you this little bit because I want you to know this, and then I'll end. Peter isn't Peter's name. His name's Simon. His name's Simon. It's on his birth certificate, Simon. His dad's name is John, so they call him Simon, son of John. But the day that Jesus meets him, Simon is walking up to meet Jesus. And as he's walking up, Jesus looks at him and goes, Simon isn't going to cut it. I'm calling you Cephas, which is translated Peter, which means the rock. Jesus, from the first day he met Simon, son of John, said, you are the rock, and I'm going to build the church on top of your redemption story. So you're going to stumble a lot. You're going to jump out of a boat and walk on the water and think that's a good idea. And you're going to grab your sword and cut off a guy's ear when they try to arrest me. And you're going to swear loyalty to me when you're actually about ready to deny me. But listen to me. Here's how highly I think of you. You are going to be the rock. And 40 days after he fails, Peter becomes the rock. God turns him around. The number 1 failure in the New Testament is a guy that's called the rich young ruler. I think that was choice number C, if you got it right. Maybe it was D, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. I'm not grading him anyway. The rich young ruler, he came to Jesus. He's a straight-A student. He walks up to Jesus and he goes, Jesus, what have I got to do to inherit the kingdom of God? And Jesus says, oh, simple. Keep all the commandments. And the guy goes, which ones? He goes, well, kind of can be summed up. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And the rich young ruler says, check, check. I've done that. And Jesus goes, great, you're getting an A in my class. Oh, there's one more thing. Go sell all your riches and give your money to the poor. Then you can come follow me. And in Matthew chapter 19, a really sad, tiny little verse is, in Matthew chapter 19, the rich young ruler was downcast and walked away. He stumbled. He was a straight A guy. He was the valedictorian. And he stumbled on the question, sell everything and come follow me. But the saddest part for him is he turns and walks away and never comes back. You guys are going to stumble. Molecular is going to get you. Statistics is going to challenge you. Boot camp is going to push you too hard. Loneliness is going to make you stumble a little bit. Yeah. We get all that. But failure is not stumbling. Failure is stumbling and not getting back up. And failure is not one of your choices. A lot of you guys don't know me, and that's okay. I wish we would have gotten to know each other, but I'm actually not a pastor. I'm an English teacher during the week. I'm just pastor here, for an hour right now. So poetry is how I communicate, and there's this poem by a guy, I don't know if you guys studied this guy, Edward Rowland Sill. He's an American poet from the 1800s. It's a name that's not known to me much at all, but he has this one poem called Opportunity. And in this poem, I'm going to tell you the story, then I'm going to read it to you. Mr. Sill tells a story about a war that's going on in the days of swords. It's hand-to-hand combat. And there's this horrible battle going on. And there's this one cowardly guy that's over by the side, and he looks at his sword, which got broken. Part of the tip got broken off, and he says, oh, what can I do with this? If I just had the sword that the prince had, that great, wonderful sword, then I could actually join the battle and fight, but this is worthless. And he throws the broken sword away, throws it onto the battlefield. The prince in the battlefield was wounded and disarmed. He doesn't have his great princely sword anymore. He's completely vulnerable and unarmed. And instead of leaving the battlefield like the coward, he starts looking for something to fight with, and you guessed it. He finds the broken sword, and he picks it up. Though he is wounded, though he is disarmed, he finds the broken sword and picks it up and leads the charge to victory. It's called Opportunity. This I beheld or dreamed in a dream. There spread a cloud of dust along a plain, and underneath the cloud, or in it, raged a furious battle, and men yelled, and swords shocked upon swords and shields. A prince's banner wavered, then staggered back, hemmed in by foes. A craven, coward, hung along the battle's edge and thought, had I a sword of keener skill, that blue blade that the king's son bears, but this blunt thing? He snapped and flung it out of his hands, and lowering, crept away and left the field. Then came the king's son, wounded, sore bestead and weaponless, and saw the broken sword, hilt buried in the dry and trodden sand, and ran and snatched it, and with his battle shout lifted afresh, he hewed his enemy down and saved a great cause that heroic day. Failure is not stumbling. That's called stumbling. Failure is when you stumble and you don't get up and you abandon the fight. You run from the battlefield. You say you can't do it. And failure is not one of your choices. Do you know why? Because I said so? Come on. Because God said so. And he proved it because he said, no. Here's how much I value you guys. I'll give you my son, the Lord Jesus, who will die not for his sins, but for your sins, to redeem you, to buy you back, to hand you another opportunity. Because failure is just not one of your choices.
Who will be a witness for my Lord? Who will be a witness for my Lord? Who will be a witness for my Lord? My soul is a witness for my Lord. My Lord. died and went to heaven, Lord, in due time. Who will be a witness for my Lord? Who will be a witness for my Lord? Who will be a witness for my Lord? Methuselah was a witness for my Lord, my Lord, for my Lord. Witness, he's a witness. Witness, he's a witness. Witness, he's a witness. Witness, he's a witness. Delilah fooled Samson, this we know, for the Bible tells us so. She shaved off his hair just as clean as your hands, and his strength became as any other man's. Who will be a witness for my Lord? Who will be a witness for my Lord? Who will be a witness for my Lord? Samson was a witness for my